Broadcasting from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review is proud to showcase Red Hat in the Solutions Spotlight, an inside look at enterprise technologies.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Red Hat, and focused on all that is new in Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.4 and 8.10. According to a recent survey by Dynatrace, 88% of organizations responded that their technology stack has increased in complexity over the past 12 months, with more than half saying that this complexity will only continue to increase in the future. This is a song that never ends. So today, we will shine our spotlight on the wide range of new and enhanced capabilities that better manage the complexity of hybrid cloud computing in an increasingly AI-centric world. To walk you through this presentation is Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, Senior Technical Marketing Manager at Red Hat. Eric, take it away.
Hey there, and welcome to another edition of What's New in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. My name is Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and today we're going to be looking at RHEL 9.4. We'll be looking at what's new. We'll talk about what's in tech preview, some deprecations, some tools and utilities that you should be keeping an eye on, as well as some offering updates and some lifecycle dates you should be aware of. And I'll close this out with some additional resources that you should be aware of. As I mentioned, my name is Eric the IT Guy Hendricks. I'm a technical marketer here at Red Hat, part of the Red Hat Enterprise Linux team. And after this presentation, feel free to reach out to me. I'm easy to find pretty much anywhere on the internet, so feel free to reach out and make a connection. Without any further ado, let's dive right into the technical updates. Now, I've gone ahead and picked out some of my favorites. Probably top of my list is the ability to use Web Console or the command line to make virtual machine snapshots. And this includes external snapshots, being able to manage those as well. Improvements to system roles. My top pick this release would be the ability to modify the bootloader. So if you need to set a bootloader password, or if you want to change that 5-second default timeout. Also, Podman 4.9 was released. We'll talk about some of those features later on in today's discussion. Also, pre-conversion reports for Convert to RHEL. We've had these assessments for in-place upgrades with Leap for some time. Now you can actually run an assessment against your RPM-based Red Hat-like systems, whether that's Oracle or CentOS Linux, and kind of get an idea of what to expect. Some road bumps you might run into, some issues that might cause a conversion to fail, and be able to fix those ahead of time. Also, last but certainly not least, probably the highlight of this release is image mode for RHEL is in tech preview, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. Now, while we just released RHEL 9.4, I'm really excited because we're already starting to have conversations and answer questions around RHEL 10, which should be released fully sometime next year. But even before we get an official beta for RHEL 10, we've got some functionality within RHEL 9.4 that are in technology preview. This is kind of a dry run, a look ahead of these features that we're hoping will be released as GA in RHEL 10. For example, WireGuard VPN. If you've ever managed an open VPN server, you know that it can be kind of clunky, it can be slow, but WireGuard is built right into the kernel. It's a reimagining of VPN services. Also, 64-bit ARM architecture-based GNOME shell. So if you're a GNOME user, you can now run workstations on ARM architecture. Nested virtual machines, hugely beneficial for managing a small lab environment or maybe a development environment, as well as improvements to some of our zero trust architecture around Intel SGX and AMD SEV and SEV-ES in the KVM virtual machine space. So a lot of functionality in tech preview in RHEL 9. Just keep in mind these features are just that. They're kind of a preview of what's to come. We're looking for your feedback, but highly discourage the use of any of these features in production. Now, as we're pulling new features and functionality into the product, of course, old functionality, old drivers, old protocols have got to be taken out to make room. Now, there's a common misconception around deprecations. Deprecations is an announcement of an intention. There is nothing that is changing with the announcement of a deprecation. It is basically the schedule of removal. And a lot of times, anything that has been deprecated won't be removed until the next major version. So, for instance, if you're running if you're using Vert Manager, for instance, you can continue to use it through the entire life cycle of RHEL 9. RHEL 9 is 2 years old, so you still got 8 years of support around RHEL 9. So Vert Manager will continue to function and be supported just as it always has. Now, will Vert Manager be in RHEL 10? Most likely not. I use that as an example. There's other things on here like cgroups v1, libdb, the SHA-1 encryption protocol. There's one other thing I'd like to call out on the slide, and that is SCP. The protocol is being deprecated. There were some inherent vulnerabilities found in the protocol itself, so SCP has been deprecated. However, the command itself will continue to function even beyond RHEL 10. The intention is to change the backend to make SCP sort of a wrapper around SFTP as opposed to using the SCP protocol. So for more details, definitely check out the release notes. These are just some of the features, tech previews, and deprecations that I find are most exciting and probably most relevant to a large audience. So check out the full release notes. Now, as you can imagine, Red Hat Enterprise Linux is a massive product and a massive undertaking. But to kind of help break down what's come out in this release, we've divided up the rest of the technical features into build, sort of that day zero operation, operate, day 2 and beyond, and secure. So let's dive into what's new in the build features. If you watch the keynotes at Red Hat Summit 2024, you'll know that Red Hat Enterprise Linux just announced in tech preview image mode for RHEL. Now, we've had things like Image Builder and UBI containers, all talking about building and deploying Red Hat Enterprise Linux in a new and different way. Well, image mode takes a lot of what we already know and repackages the way you build and deploy Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating systems. Here's how. Image mode for RHEL is basically utilizing a bootc or bootable container image to build a full-blown operating system using a container file. So you can now start to use your same container tools and workflows to build your RHEL operating system. It comes packaged with the kernel, with all the drivers, with an init system, with systemd, with all the things that make your Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system what it is. You can use a container file and run commands like dnf install, or pull in files from a local file system and build it into your image. Once you're done with that, you can deploy it to a container registry like quay.io. That way your development teams can just do like they do for container development. They can pull your image, or you can pull it down to, say, a Mac workstation using Podman Desktop. This is in tech preview, but it gives you so many options, so many different ways to use your existing tool set to start treating your operating system like a throwaway container image. This takes that pets versus cattle argument and completely blows it away, because you'll be able to build, configure, scan, test, and deploy your operating system just like you are using CI/CD pipelines for containers today. This is early days, but it is so awesome. I'm really excited to see what comes up in the next couple of releases. And if you want to learn more, you can check out Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents on our RHEL YouTube channel. We did an episode not too long ago about image mode and how to use it, and provided some Q&A and some live demos. Image mode for RHEL, hugely popular. Go check it out. Now, in this release, there's been a common theme, a lot of development around ARM, as well as virtualization. So why not have an announcement slide around ARM virtualization? So if you're running ARM and you've been wanting to virtualize some of your workloads, now with 9.4 and newer, you can do just that. In fact, using 64K page sizes, you can actually deploy up to about 64 virtual machines on top of RHEL 9.4 with a 9.4 guest. So if you're running virtual infrastructure on Intel, you can also now do so on ARM-based system-ready systems as well. Red Hat Insights is making it easier than ever to build and deploy Red Hat Enterprise Linux images that suit your needs and your lifecycle requirements. With RHEL 9.4, we've actually introduced a set of features and functionality called Proactive Guidance for Image Builder. This is basically a series of tooltips, drop-down menus, graphs built into Red Hat Insight's Image Builder that is making it easier for you to make informed decisions on your workloads. For instance, if you're trying to decide whether or not you should run a new application on top of RHEL 8 versus RHEL 9, if you select RHEL 8 in Image Builder, you can actually see that a pop-up will show up that says, hey, guess what? Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8 has just entered its maintenance cycle. So while you have full 5 years of support, you won't be getting any new features, no new drivers, no new kernel versions. You might consider using RHEL 9. As proactive guidance for Image Builder grows, we'll be looking at things like analyzing package selection, recommending certain packages. For instance, if you choose a database, it may recommend a lot of users that deploy that database also deploy Nginx as a web server. Would you like to add Nginx? All these helpful hints and lifecycle dates, all of this is included in the Image Builder tool. And because it's software as a service, we're adding new features all the time. So check out Proactive Guidance for Image Builder on Red Hat Insights. Next up, it seems like everyone in the industry is jumping on the AI bandwagon, and Red Hat is no different. At Red Hat Summit, we announced a project alongside IBM Research called Instruct Lab, which is Red Hat's and IBM's co-founded attempt to open source AI and LLM models. Now, if you're new to AI or if you're developing your own large language model, LLM, you don't have to look any further than a tool you're probably already familiar with, and that's Podman Desktop. Podman Desktop makes it easy to build containers, to write container files, to interact with Kubernetes or OpenShift. Now, Podman Desktop actually includes AI Lab. Basically, what this does is allows you to pull down, like you would a container, an open source based LLM. You can write your recipes, you can experiment in the background, you can create prototypes, or decide how and what LLM you want to deploy in production. All this you can pull down and run locally on a Windows, Mac, or Linux system using Podman Desktop AI Lab. Go check it out today. It's true, inside Red Hat Enterprise Linux 9.4, we spent a ton of engineering cycles making it easier to build and deploy your operating system. But that doesn't make the burden of running Linux systems at scale day to day any less difficult. That's why we've continued to iterate on some of our operation tasks, things like Lightspeed. Now, Lightspeed is in the planning stages, but it is so cool I had to share it with all of you. Red Hat Enterprise Linux Lightspeed was inspired by Ansible Lightspeed, which is basically an AI large language model built to understand Ansible and Ansible playbooks to help write Ansible playbooks using VS Code. Now, that's Ansible Lightspeed. So Red Hat Enterprise Linux Lightspeed expands on that idea. If we can use AI, LLMs, and a chatbot experience to help write Ansible playbooks, what if you could use it to help manage your Linux operating systems? Are you a Windows user who's on call to manage Linux systems? Are you new to Linux in general? What if you could enter a chat-like experience and ask your system questions? What services are currently running the hottest on my system? What's using the most resources? Are there any CVEs you're aware of that we need to patch against? As RHEL Lightspeed develops, we'll be able to answer these questions and more using a chat-like experience within your Linux operating system. Now, there's nothing released, there's no code, there's no demos you can try for yourself just yet. This is in the planning stages, but we're really working hard on this. We had such a huge acceptance of Ansible Lightspeed and the ability to not have to write all these playbooks by hand that it just makes sense to extend that type of functionality into Red Hat Enterprise Linux. In my top picks, we talked about Convert to RHEL and the pre-conversion assessment report. There's one other thing I'd like to mention on these reports, and that's the ability to register CentOS Linux 7 systems with Red Hat Insights to run these pre-conversion analyses at scale. That's right. You can register a non-Red Hat Enterprise Linux operating system, CentOS Linux 7 only at this time, to Red Hat Insights to run conversion and conversion analysis tasks at scale. So if you go to console.redhat.com, register your systems, you can run those reports, get an idea of what could possibly break, and then from there, actually schedule or batch your conversion processes. With CentOS Linux 7 coming end of life imminently, this is huge. Go in, register your CentOS Linux 7 systems, and run the pre-conversion assessment report today to get an idea of what you need to do to convert to an enterprise-grade supported operating system like RHEL 7. My co-host of Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents, Brian Smith, is always talking about system roles. It's become sort of an inside joke on our YouTube channel. That doesn't take away from the fact that it is so powerful. These system roles are just few lines of YAML code built into an Ansible playbook that allow you to configure either a single system or multiple systems. Things from the firewall to SE Linux to LVM configuration to, as I mentioned at the top, the bootloader. If you haven't used system roles yet, here's a sample. This is the bootloader example that I've been using throughout this presentation. All it takes is defining a few settings, calling the appropriate RHEL system role, and running the playbook. What's great is these can be imported into Red Hat Satellite or Red Hat Ansible automation platform and deployed at scale, whether a single system, hundreds of systems, or even thousands of systems. Imagine not having to set a bootloader password by hand in the image or by hand after deployment. Red Hat Enterprise Linux system roles are a huge boon to any systems administrator, and if you don't have this tool in your tool belt yet, check out Red Hat Enterprise Linux system roles. Moving right along, Red Hat Enterprise Linux wouldn't be a developer platform of choice if it weren't for our amazing toolkits and our amazing ability to help you choose your own adventure through, say, application streams. So if you want to run latest and greatest on top of RHEL 9.4, you can use Python 3.12, PostgreSQL 16, as well as a number of others. And probably my favorite on the list is a newer version of Git 2.41 and a newer version of Git LFS as well. Developers love building their applications and building their tools on top of Red Hat Enterprise Linux because through tools like containerization or application streams, we help make it easy for you to choose your own adventure, choose your own speed as to what toolkits that you're using. But if you're like me and like to run the latest and greatest of everything, Red Hat Enterprise Linux has you covered there. So with RHEL 9.4, we have tools like Python 3.12, PostgreSQL 16, as well as a host of others, and probably most notable for me is newer versions of Git and Git LFS. If you would like to find out the full list, head over to developers.redhat.com. While you're there, you can sign up for a developer account, which provides about 16 RHEL systems, as well as access to our knowledge base and all that for individuals for free, but also to check out their blog where they talk about some of these new features, as well as things like image mode and our intentions for RHEL Lightspeed. So check out developers.redhat.com. I hinted at the top of this presentation about Podman 4.9. So if you are a heavy Podman user and you're trying to remember Podman-command or Podman space command, Podman 4.9 restructured the Podman utility and suite of tools into a single command. Now you can use Podman with multi-command modules. Think of this like yum used to be, where you'd have yum and yum-utils. Now all of that is built into subcommands, so the Podman utility is a lot cleaner, a lot easier to use now. Also worth noting in Podman 4.9 is that SQLite is now the backend database that's replacing BoltDB. So if you reinstall Podman or install fresh, just note that you'll be using SQLite on the backend instead of Bolt. Also, we talked about this on a recent episode of RHEL Presents, that Podman 4.9 in Tech Preview has the ability to build from multiple architectures. So you can use Podman as a multi-arch build farm. So if you're building for Intel, now you can also in a single click build for ARM, and we're looking into other architectures as well. That's in Tech Preview, but it makes building containers from multiple architectures so much easier. And if you're using a tool like Podman Desktop, it's literally just another checkbox. If you're like me and you've got accounts all over the place, sometimes multiple accounts, and you manage a host of systems from dozens into hundreds of Linux systems, wouldn't it be nice to use, say, a USB key to log into those systems? Well, thanks largely to our partnership with Yubico, you can now use verified passkey authentication on RHEL 9.4. To boil that down, basically, you can use your YubiKey to log into your RHEL systems now. And not just Yubico, but any FIDO2 compliant passkey. This makes it easier to manage user accounts, to manage logins, but also to help comply with zero trust architecture. Really excited for our partnership with Yubico and to see what other tools and utilities that we can include with YubiKeys. Now, there is so much technical meat in RHEL 9.4, but before I let you go, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about some updates to our product lifecycle and our releases. First off is minor release changes. This only affects minor releases. This doesn't include major releases, but we are standing down our minor release beta program. Now, before you tune me out, this only affects the formal program. Here's why. Red Hat Enterprise Linux has minor releases every 6 months. About 6 weeks before that minor release goes GA, we have a beta release. The intention of a beta, a lot of times, is to be able to download a piece of software, find bugs, report features that you find are missing, and to hopefully see those features or those bug fixes by the time GA comes out. However, Red Hat Enterprise Linux has an upstream first model, which means that depending on the scale of the change, we'll make that change or we'll fix that bug in CentOS Stream first, or even up to Fedora Linux. So this created a lot of concern with customers and partners that they'd report a bug or they'd request a feature and it wouldn't be available on GA. So instead, there will still be beta ISOs and beta repositories that you can gain access to. You can still report bugs, you can still provide feedback, and we highly encourage you to do so. There just won't be a formal program around it. Again, like I said, that doesn't affect major releases like the RHEL 10 beta, which we're currently in planning for. But this does take place with RHEL 9.5. So in about 6 months, in our next release, you won't see a minor release program, but you will see a beta announcement. If you want to find out more, go check out our blog entitled Upcoming Improvements to Red Hat Enterprise Linux Minor Release Betas. That is, of course, on the Red Hat blog. Now, we are in the midst of what I affectionately call Techmageddon 2024. Basically, the entire enterprise Linux landscape is changing drastically over the next few months. First off, CentOS Linux 7 is going end of life on June 30th. CentOS Stream 8 has reached end of builds as of the end of May. Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6. Let's have a moment for RHEL 6. This was either my first or second brand new operating system that I ever got to deploy in an enterprise environment. RHEL 6 is now end of ELS, so that extended support lifecycle has come to a close. And now RHEL 7 has moved into that ELS lifecycle as it ended its maintenance at the end of June. Also, RHEL 8 has moved into maintenance. And but the good news is, if you're looking to deploy a brand new workload that you want to run for a number of years, you can go to RHEL 9 because it will be in full support still until May 31st of 2027. Now, what does that look like? Obviously, CentOS Linux 7, we've known about for a while, going end of life. CentOS Stream 8 is gone end of build. But what about RHEL 7? RHEL 7 has had 2 maintenance support cycles, a full support cycle, but now it's out of its maintenance phase, and it does require an ELS add-on, a paid add-on, to continue to get updates and get support for RHEL 7. RHEL 8 has now entered that maintenance support cycle, so it'll get RHEL 8.10 will have maintenance support for the next 5 years, whereas RHEL 9 will continue to get new features and enhancements for the next few years. With RHEL 8 entering its maintenance phase, 8.10 will be the final minor release, and that'll be supported for 5 years. And then we intend on having an ELS program just like we've had for 6 and 7. So 8.10, final minor release. So if you're having to patch RHEL 8, definitely be looking at moving to RHEL 8.10 as soon as possible. RHEL 9.4 is an EUS release, which means that it can have up to 2 or 4 years of support. So if you've got a hardware vendor or maybe a heavy workload that requires additional time to get certified, or you need to move between minor versions more slowly because maybe it requires you to recertify. Your even numbered RHEL 9 releases are where you want to land on. 9.4 is one of those. Also, the EUS repositories for 9.2 are now available. So if you're on 9.0, you can move to 9.2 or 9.2 to 9.4. So definitely check out the EUS program for extended update support. Now, I've already been asked about RHEL 10 because simple math would state that since RHEL 9 is 2 years old, that sometime next year we can expect to see RHEL 10. That is, in fact, true. We're hoping to launch RHEL 10 sometime mid-2025. I expect, as we have for a number of years, that a lot of the announcements around RHEL 10 will land at Summit 2025. You can actually go to summit.redhat.com to mark your calendar with the dates and location for Red Hat Summit. But there's so much that's going on before then. In fact, Fedora Linux just passed Fedora 40. They are the upstream to CentOS Stream, which is the upstream to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Sometime later on this year, I don't have a date for you yet, but CentOS Stream 10 will be launched, and that'll be your chance to really get your hands dirty with what will eventually become RHEL 10. And in fact, late this year, towards the last few months of the year, we'll have a formal RHEL 10 beta program where you can download the ISOs, install RHEL 10, get your hands dirty. I imagine image mode will have some awesome new features. There'll probably be some more system roles, knowing Brian Smith and his engineering team. And then again, RHEL 10 GA sometime middle of next year. So keep an eye out on our YouTube channel. Keep an eye out on the Red Hat blog. There'll be more announcements about RHEL 10 and the roadmap as we get closer to GA. That is the crux of what I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to leave you with a couple of resources. I've mentioned Red Hat Enterprise Linux Presents a few times. We're live every other Wednesday, and you can catch our full backlog of episodes on our YouTube channel at Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Also, if you want to learn hands-on key features and skills, you can join us live every Friday for Into the Terminal, where we look at the terminal and try and spend about 30 minutes to teach you a new operation or a new skill or talk about new features. So definitely check that episode and our full catalog of video and live streams over at youtube.com. Also, if you want to try out some of the features and functionality that we've talked about, you can head over to lab.redhat.com. We've got 20 some odd labs. Most of them are updated to RHEL 9.4. You can learn things from upgrades and conversions to user account management to deploying Jupyter Notebook. We've got over 20 labs. They're free. They target about 10 to 15 minutes, so they're great for taking a little bit of time out of your lunch hour to learn something new. lab.redhat.com. But most of all, I want to say thank you for your time. I know that we're all insanely busy and there's just so much going on that needs our attention. So I appreciate you spending about 20 to 30 minutes with me talking about RHEL 9.4 and what's coming in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. With that said, I've been Eric the IT Guy Hendricks, and on behalf of myself and the entire Red Hat Enterprise Linux team, we'll see you next time.
So there you have it, another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank Eric and Red Hat for that presentation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.